The FTC just banned non-compete agreements. The Federal Trade Commission has issued a final rule making it illegal for bosses to make workers sign non-competes in any scenario, avoiding nearly all existing non-competes. Wasn't this kind of, am I wrong, or were we always kind of heading in this direction? Like, weren't non-competes not enforceable in several states, including California? I think. I could be wrong on that. Non-competes seem like really shitty practice, too. Like, why the fuck?
Today, the FTC has finalized a rule that will eliminate the vast...
What happened to your recomp plan? You're just doing retard fuck-around-itis right now, jumping back and forth between goals while committing to none of them. What are you talking about? I go to the gym, I lift weights, and I run, and then I'm just losing weight. This is what I've been doing for like 3 months. That's all I'm doing. That's the head of the FTC. Why not just make an announcement? Why do the fake interview thing?
Majority of non-compete clauses in people's contracts. A non-compete clause is a provision that basically prevents people from taking a job with a competitor or starting a competing business, usually within a particular geographic area and for a certain period of time. So around 30 million American workers are covered by a non-compete.
The incredible number of non-compete.
30 million? That's wild. What?
We heard from workers who were...
There's only like one form of non-compete that I think I could like tolerate. And actually, you probably still can do it legally. I can understand not taking trade secrets from like one job to another, or not taking customers from one job to another. That would make sense. But like, you can't even work in the industry. That seems wild and stupid and crazy.
Prevented them from...
Those are covered under NDAs. Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Being able to do business in the same state.
When you think of the workers and the impact on their wages and earnings in America, what do you anticipate is going to happen as
wages should go up, right? Because now you've got to pay more to maintain your employees because you can't use non-competes to artificially depress wages. And other people might start offering more as well because now you can compete with employees that previously would have been off the market, right? More workers is upward pressure on wages, should be.
a result of this non-compete ban?
Wages will go up. The average worker will make $529 more every year, which collectively means that tens of billions or hundreds of $129 more.
What a weird number. The average worker. Does an average even matter here? I imagine for some people that number is going to be way higher. For others, it's not going to be as high.
Every year, which collectively means that tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars of wages will be going back to workers.
Help people understand why that is. So if there's hundreds of billions of dollars increasing in the economy, how did that happen?
That would happen because right now, workers are stuck.
Would it not make sense for highly trained positions? You wouldn't want to train somebody and then just switch to your competition. Am I derpsing? Well, I mean, like training, I mean, one, you have to pay for training anyway, but also two, everybody's going to train you probably no matter what. Even if you come from another job, they're still going to probably train you at your new job. But then also, training should happen in school. That's what you go to school for, right? Is to get your base level of knowledge up.
Stuck in place because of these non-competes. And so even if they get a better job opportunity with higher wages, with better benefits, they can't actually switch jobs, which is bad for those workers. It's also bad for other workers who...
Does this make existing contracts non-competes to be invalid, or how do you think that works? Correct. I believe this invalidates all. This is avoiding nearly all existing non-competes.
Can I ask you, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Would you support this only applying to positions under $500,000 a year of compensation? I think that's a fair, realistic outcome of what it should be. I think if you're getting hired as the CEO or CTO of Google or fucking Apple, that carries with it a lot more weight of the knowledge that you have and the jobs underneath you that could be affected. You know, like, for instance, you basically know all of Apple's plans out for the next, like as a CEO, for instance, right? You would know critical data that could, I don't want to say ruin the business, but would make your portability catastrophic potentially. As opposed to the average tech worker who shouldn't be having it. If you're making,
well, I mean, there's going to be like trade, I imagine like trade secrets and everything are still going to be kind of not okay, right?
Well, I mean, if what you know, right? Like, again, imagine you're the CEO of Apple and you get recruited to be the CEO of Google, for instance. The knowledge you have of as virtue of doing it, regardless of trade secrets, is just, I mean, you could just steer the ship in the correct way. I think that this should probably...
What would that mean, though? How would you get...
I would basically say that if I was in charge of writing this law, I would say...
Or no, I'm asking, like, what? Theoretically, how could you abuse that? How could you steer the ship?
So let's say that we knew that... I mean, the hypothetical situation here. Let's say that Google had poured billions of dollars of research into a new technology that was a widget, and this was crazy, and nobody has been looking into this space at all the whole time, and Google has been silently in the R&D labs for the last like 500 years. They've been looking into this skunkworks project, and it's going to be a game changer.
Yep.
Okay, basically Google's moving into widgets, and nobody saw it coming, right?
Mhm.
Now, it could be a big deal for Google, but Google CEO is paid, whatever, a little bit amount, but he doesn't stand to become like a trillionaire. He's not the founder CEO, if you will. He's just there in that position. Or maybe he's not even a CEO. Let's put him down a little bit lower. He's just the VP of engineering that happens to work on this project. He makes $800K a year, or $400K a year or whatever, and he has some stock. But, he's in charge of an important skunkworks thing. He gets recruited by Facebook. Essentially what it's done is, as a result of that, his knowledge, he's now allowed to steer, and all of that knowledge that's come from that, he's steering the new company into this direction with zero compensation as a result. So yes, this is an extreme example that I'm giving in this case, where I could basically, as a CEO, I'd be like, hey, listen, you know what we should get into? Widgets. And that's really
I feel
hard
like
to push.
my assumption would be that this realistically can't happen, that nobody can predict the future that well, and that I would be surprised if something like this was possible to capitalize on. Let's think of a real world example. Let's say that you were let's say you were a VP of future tech design at like fucking Meta, okay? And then you leave the company knowing that, oh my God, they're going to do all these big investments into virtual reality. And then you go to another company and you're like, because Facebook invested a fuck ton of money into that entire division. And then you go to another company and then they try to, follow Facebook there or be the second one to the finish line, basically. Well, now you've bankrupted like two companies because like that
Well,
wouldn't work.
it could be more simple. Let's say you work at Facebook and you're just, a VP there or whatever, and you don't make 500K or something, but you know that in 18 months, Facebook is going to be combining WhatsApp and X and Y and Z, and it's all going to be this one thing, and it's actually going to make Gmail irrelevant. And then you go and you get hired at Google. If you're in that position, you can basically be like, we need to fucking strengthen our Gmail shit pronto, okay? And they're like, what do you mean? Why should we strengthen our Gmail shit pronto? It's like, I don't want to say too much.
Sure.
But
I mean, I understand what you're saying. There's two things. So one, maybe this is already solved because somebody in YouTube chat said, FYI, the final rule excludes senior executives who are earning over 150K annually who are in policy-making positions, which would seem to cover a lot of the people we were talking about.
Then what are we even arguing for?
But then also, too, what somebody in DGG chat said, non-competes have been out of the picture in California for a bit, and none of this is happening. That is true as well, right? Like, non-competes have been tossed out of California, whereas Silicon Valley isn't.
No. In executive positions, they still exist. That's incorrect.
Oh, okay. So then the federal rule is essentially
I thought this was
copying
getting rid of. Yeah, no. There's definitely there's hard lockups in that shit as well if you're in senior positions. That's true. So wow, you made me argue against something that's not in the fucking bill. So basically, this bill only applies to what, people under 150K a year?
Why would you assume that?
I thought that's what you just said.
This says, the guy said the final rule excludes senior executives who are earning over 150K annually who are in policy-making positions. So I imagine that
means,
somebody like Johnny would still be able to go to different jobs without signing the non-compete because I don't think he's like a senior executive, right?
Yeah, I guess that's going to have to, all of a sudden, everyone that's hired to Amazon is a senior executive of waste management or something, and they're the janitor. Oh, wow. I don't know. That's funny.
Oh, somebody linked the rule if you want. It's a quick 570-page document if you want to read that.
Oh yeah, let me just go through that real quick. I think it's fair. I mean, as a policy, I think it would be fair to not ever have this include executives. I think executives get benefits and knowledge of their position, and I think they, to a certain extent, man, I can almost have it go the other way, like you're saying as well.
The only thing I don't think there's anything necessarily bad with protecting, like, obviously trade secrets and stuff like that. The only thing that sucks is you ideally, in a good environment, you want employers competing on wages and benefits and work environments. You don't want them competing on, well, if you leave, you're fucked, so fuck you. You have to work here. Because if you leave, you're
No, you don't want that,
right?
of course. But let me ask you, as a result of this is certainly better for employee pay, because people are going to have to be compensated better as a result to stay when they could potentially leave, whereas now they couldn't or something. I wonder, do you think that there's a cost of goods that goes up with this, that they are underselling? So, for instance, if the average employee that this affects is going up $570 a year in compensation, does that mean that there's a negative effect to consumers where some of the total cost of goods will go up to basically equal that out? Is that a possibility?
Possible. Yeah, probably. I mean, cost has to get passed on somehow. But the profit
Yeah,
margins
okay.
of particular industries could just come down as well. It's possible. There's probably going to be some combination of profit margin falling slightly, cost to consumer increasing slightly.
If you were writing this rule, would you have it include executives at first hop?
I don't know. I would have to know more about like what are the chances of people taking sensitive information with them? How does that play out in the real world? Like what does that actually look like?
I guess what is the danger if you're the CEO? I mean, mostly this is applying to tech companies, I guess. I mean, it could a little bit to traditional companies. Like, is the CEO of Pepsi? Is there a lot of damage he can do if he goes and he becomes the new CEO of Coke because that guy died? I don't know.
Like my assumption would be in general that would be an exceptionally rare thing, that companies probably lay out their investment strategies and R&D and shit like a decade in advance or like years and years in advance, that it's unlikely that a CEO is going to jump to a Fortune 500 company and be like, listen guys, I just came from this other company and I've got a whole bunch of information that none of you had any idea about and we're going to 180 everything and change. Like I feel like the chance of that happening.
Well, no, I'm not saying 180, but I mean, let's use the example I just did. So I don't even think Pepsi and Coke are two separate companies, but for the sake of argument, let's just say that, I mean, like they're owned by conglomerates, I'm sure. But for the sake of argument, let's say that the Pepsi CEO dies and then Pepsi goes and they say, you know what we should do? Let's fucking recruit the Coke CEO. I mean, because they're both about the same market cap. So they go and they offer the Coke CEO like 20% more than he's making. How do you feel? Do you feel that there's some shit that they can happen that all of a sudden makes this almost, I don't want to say like a monopolistic tactic, but this guy, obviously, he knows all the shit. Now he knows everything from both companies, basically, if you will. Like that's pretty, that's going to make it really fucking hard for that Pepsi company to compete when any fast moves or sneaky moves or the suppliers or any of that type of mind share is gone and goes over to Coke at that point. Wouldn't that like hurt job retention? Maybe Pepsi gets put out of business or has to do massive layoffs because some of the competitive advantages and research and knowledge that they had now also belongs to Coke.
I mean, for that type of stuff, if you can patent it or trademark it, then theoretically it shouldn't be copyable by another company, right?
I don't think you can patent or trademark like a vendor relationship or what we're planning on doing in 2 years or the study, we know that Crystal Coke is like 10 times better and everyone's going to be there in a year. I don't think that is I don't think that's like the type of thing you can do.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to see it work in practice if that actually happens. I just feel like companies are so big and the plans are so like broad that I don't know if an individual coming in with knowledge, I feel like either one, that knowledge would already be leaked, like people would already have a rough idea of what XYZ company is working on, especially in places like San Francisco where so many people are like friends with other people in companies and cross chatter happens between like employees and probably even fucking VPs and shit. Like I'm sure, I'm totally pulling this out of my ass, but like I'm sure that like VPs at like Apple probably have dinner with like VPs at fucking Microsoft and Google, and these guys all like chat in like similar rooms and talk to each other and shit. So I would be surprised if it was like some hardcore like Chinese tech lockdown where they've super sectioned everything. But maybe it is. Maybe people do treat that shit like insanely serious. I'm not sure. I don't know. But I feel like the programs and everything are so broad and macro and all encompassing that you're not going to see significant departures from what's happening anyway. That'd be my guess.
Ooh, another one also. What about pharma as well? That's even that. Oh my God, that's fucking hugely.
I feel like for
damaging,
pharma,
don't you
I feel
think?
like it would be even more impossible for one person to go from a company to do anything and mess anything up. Like, let's say I
What
go
do
to
you
another
mean?
company.
That could be crazy. You're in a biotech startup and you're working on the cure for AIDS and you're almost there and you have this shit and it's done. It's not patented yet because the second you patent it, well, first off, the patent takes a long time to do, but it's not patented yet. You think that oh my God, imagine you just go to fucking Merck and you have all the information of everything that you were working on and you go and you'd be like, you know what, we should look into this protein. This is a pretty interesting protein. Don't you guys think? This is a pretty cool protein. We might be able to do some stuff pretty
Yeah,
fast
but I feel
here.
like I imagine for stuff like that, like when you say like an interesting protein, the answer is it's actually going to be more like a protein given like this treatment, like with this like process applied to it in these types of laboratories under these strict conditions with these types of subject. Like everything's gonna be so complicated that the people you're going to do like, that's great, but like we would have to completely change our entire R&D division in order to start to research in this direction. Like we just can't do it. That'd be my guess.
I don't know.
I could be wrong,
mean,
but
you know, one of the huge things that happened was when Google acquired what was it, Anthony, what's his face, who did Waymo. And it was like a huge scandal because of the way that they did it. Because basically this guy on the way out obviously he did like way more illegal shit. He took like actual docs and shit like that with him. But if you're knowledgeable enough, you can do damage to a startup that's tremendous, just like that. Especially if you have kind of high tech stuff, or
I don't even know what. I don't know anything about the Waymo stuff, so I can't even.
It was a big deal. I think Uber hired the CEO of Waymo, which was owned by Google, and on the way out the door, basically this guy who was running Google's self-driving division took all of that knowledge, and this was like a fucking huge. It was one of the biggest scandals that there was at the time, because this was Google's entire investment into self-driving, and now Uber basically just cock-blocked and took the fucking dude. And this guy, I mean, it's not completely relevant because this guy also stole like actual documents and shit that went with him, which was retarded. But if he didn't do that, think about the damage and investment in, I guess, like, are you less compelled to make big bets and big investments if the people who do it might just fucking leave at the end and just go do a startup and do the same thing, or go to another company and be like, hey, this is what I was working on. What do you think? Because if there's no NDA, I don't know if you can also have a
sure. We just don't have the information. Like, given other information, I think I'd be 1 billion% correct. Given other information, you could be 1 billion% correct. But like, I don't know what the world is actually like. Like, and I think we would agree on that. That if it was the case that like a lot of execs like chat with each other, most of the stuff is open secrets anyway, and your whole company has to be oriented towards a thing that one CEO or one VP moving from one company to another, which probably are, which might already happen.
I know that's the case. Don't you remember back in the day how big of a scandal it was when the iPhone 4 like slipped out from one of the fucking developers' pockets at a bar? It was like the biggest scandal of like the fucking year, that someone got a look at the fucking iPhone first before anyone else. This was fucking crazy, this deal that happened. And then Gizmodo or someone like that, they did a story on it. That was fucking mental. So no, I don't think that Apple employees go out telling everyone, hey, we have a new phone coming out.
So again,
cool.
If I had to guess without knowing anything about that, the difference there is that if an actual physical like end product got leaked, that now you've got the ability to do all the things I said before would be really hard. Like a VP going over isn't going to be able to tell you the exact fucking thing about everything about an underlying technology. But if you've got a physical piece of hardware, well, now you can actually put this in a shop and start tearing down everything to get an idea of what's in it and what's not. So I imagine like losing end products like that, especially prototypes, would be pretty big deals. But I don't. But even for that, I mean, like, what happened? Did the whole industry fuck over Apple? Did Apple get completely fucked because that iPhone 4 got?
I mean,
leaked,
I guess you could say.
Did anything bad even happen?
Well, I mean, there was certain. We got to look at the new iPhone, like,
yeah, but did they suffer any competitive disadvantage?
They probably
whatsoever?
did. Yeah, I would imagine almost absolutely so. The second that iPhone was leaked, do you think that someone at Samsung looked at this and said, "Okay, wow, this thing has a front-facing camera. We need to start putting that on all of our cameras"? I didn't know that was a big deal.
No, I don't think so. If anything, I bet that.
Oh, I disagree. I think that probably would have. There's definitely things that were.
Why would they even know? Why would they even assume that the front-facing camera would be a good idea?
Well, I mean, they know that they're doing it. They know that there's a timeline. Like, okay,
well, wait, but even if they knew they were doing it,
timeline.
Even if they knew they were doing it, how would they know it would be a good idea?
Do
you remember how many companies, for instance, let's say, like, because here I could easily throw this counterexample at you. Remember when the iPhone tossed the headphone jack? What if that had leaked early? Well, we don't need to imagine what would have happened. Every company was making fun of them. I think it was either Samsung or Google were literally running ads for their new phones. By the way, guys, we still have that 1/8-inch jack. Use our phones. And then the next generation, they axed it. So if they would have gotten a hold of the phone ahead of time, we'd be like, oh my God.
That's not a product feature. That was that was Apple trying to tie people more into their ecosystem. That wasn't a benefit. This is an entire new product that was leaked. And as a result, now people have an access to basically know, okay, this is what Apple is launching in 6 months. It's going to have a front-facing camera. It's going to have a better screen, and it's going to have these features. Okay, we need to change our shit. We were waiting for Q2 of next year because no one else had a front-facing camera. Now we're going to go ahead and we have to accelerate that now.
Well, but I mean, even when you say
priority.
I guess I just don't know. It comes down to like, even when you say, for instance, when you talk about the screen, does Apple make their own screens?
No, they use Foxconn, I think, for a lot of their supplying.
Yeah,
shit.
and other companies like manufacture this shit. Like, I doubt that these are.
You're saying that big companies already have enough espionage internally that they already.
Yeah, my guess is going to be they kind of have like a rough idea of the roadmaps of the other companies. I seriously doubt that like when companies are making huge announcements about future product roadmaps, that every other company is like listening intently to figure out what's going on. They probably, my guess is they kind of have a rough idea. That'd be my
I just want to respond to a retarded chatter. Why is Dan talking about physical products? It's not the same. Because it is is the same, because if you are working on that physical product and you're the vice president of that physical product, and then you go work at another company, it's the equivalent of you having the actual device, isn't it? So that's why we're bringing it up as an example of potential damages as a result of a product or a new feature being leaked before it was ready, and the knowledge that comes from that. I'm glad that I could make that clear for you. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I guess if I was in charge of the rule, and I don't know how it's written now, I would say probably anyone whose total compensation is over 500,000.
Why would TC
USD a
matter?
year.
I don't think that matters. What would matter is
I think it matters tremendously.
Why?
Because I think that if you're an upper level executive, that you're given access to things that shape
Wait,
the jobs in the
but why are
company
you
more
tying
than the
this?
janitor.
Why are you tying this to TC? Why wouldn't you just tie this to being an upper level executive then?
Because I think that if you're in a, like, TC is going to compensate, hopefully, with the value that you're providing to the company. So if you're
Well, yeah, but what if it's for
TC
like a smaller company? What if I just start buying off execs from like smaller companies whose, whose senior VPs TC is like 300K or something?
Wait, so, well, I mean, we can get to that argument, but that's a different argument. The argument I'm making is that, for instance, a programmer that's making $1 million a year is probably making that $1 million a year because they're getting access, or it could be just that they're like the best in the business at what they do, but they learn certain things as a result. I think that if you get to a certain level of TC, and I would concede to you probably some sort of job title as well, that you would not, that you could be under some sort of NDA. I think that would be realistic and fair. If you're making $1 million a year and you're in management, that would be fine. $1 million a year and you're just like a really amazing programmer, that's probably not fine. I think you probably should be able to leave. But, there is, I guess, some catalysts that go with that. The access of knowledge that you have as a result, probably there's some risk. But yeah, I think it should only apply to management probably, and only to management over a certain value. You don't want the fucking Dairy Queen guy. He shouldn't apply to this rule. He should not have to sign an NDA. But the guy in charge of North America operations for Google, that's another story maybe.
Huh. Okay.
Has Dan ever programmed anything in his life? Yes, he has. Have you? I mean, you kind of have with the Obsidian. That counts, right?
No. Programmed? I built my first website, but it was all HTML and CSS and maybe some copy pasted JavaScript. So if that counts, then yeah, I am a programmer.
Dan, a good example, I think, is the CPU industry and executives moving to China. I did read something about that, but I'm not too sure exactly about how all of that works. That's another thing that's very, I think this stuff, maybe it's industries that would be not affected. What about defense technology too? You've come up with the ray beam. You know what I mean? You have made the Cuban ray beam. You just gonna let that guy go and work for fucking Boeing? I don't think so. You gotta lock that guy up. That's too big to have it get out there.
Maybe, yeah. True. Possibly. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. That was it. I'll let you get back to your shit.
Okay.
Just the capitalist stuff. So, all right,
Be
later.
careful. Don't die.
Being
Yeah,
created
bye.
because of these non-competes. So there's just less churn in the economy overall.